Ottar vs. Mia, Ryuu and Bell. Battle audio. There was once a mill. The mill was an abandoned child. The oldest memories are of freezing cold that seemed to burn his skin, and of dark nights that were merciless and vicious. He was too young to realize the fact that he was very lonely and was about to end up in a lonely alley. You, alone? And the goddess appeared here. The fierce darkness was dispelled, and a silvery glow like a halo came into his vision. With the silvery light, the consciousness of a young child, who had not yet established himself, sprouted. What is his name? I couldn't answer this question. Then, I will give you one. She smiled, but he couldn't not either. For him, who did not even know himself, the goddess who picked him up was the whole world. She was everything to him. Your name is Ottar. So from that day on, the male became the fierce one, Ottar. Aya. The dwarf's blow hit the black sword. Haya. Flame Volt. The star sword swung by the elf and the inflammatory thunder released by the rabbit were subdued with one hand swing. Mia and the others attacked in turn, and Ottar caught them all and returned them immediately afterwards. The men had no words that should be spoken. Men only know to go to battle. For Ottar, there is no difference between the past, which is the origin of himself, and the present, which unfolds in front of him. Why do you want to fight? No one asked him that, and he never asked himself. There was not even a doubt about it. After all, it was simple. That's all Ottar could do. Cold and mute, he could not make her who gave him everything smile. Therefore, it was power. Only by being strong could he repay the goddess. Ottar could only prove himself by fighting. Only through fighting can he ask whether he is right or wrong, even good or bad. Thus, Ottar conducts a test. Ottar makes an inquiry. Ottar confirms. What can you do for the goddess who is everything to him? Can you forcibly achieve such beautiful words as rescue? The black greatsword that swung down broke the stone slab and the earth below, blowing Mia, Ryuu and Bell away. With a blow of his own, he launched an inquiry to the three souls that the goddess had fallen in love with at first sight. And then, if you can't win against me, just die here. If you can't transcend this body, you are not qualified to save goddess. Not to mention saving the girl. It is something that Ottar would recognize. It's not fiction, it's not a dream, and it's not sophistry. It is power. If you cannot demonstrate power, then the victory of the goddess will not be shaken. The strongest warriors who remained on the battlefield shouted their will and made their vows. All were not wrong. They were only thinking of the goddess, or following their own beliefs by carrying out their own selfish desires. To save her, to protect her, to bind her, and to repay her, the familia members of the goddess of beauty became fierce and violent. Ta! The dwarf struck with his full strength and swung his big black sword to meet the blow. Ryuu! The human released a double sword slash that bounced off with all the hand armor on one side, rendering it ineffective. Starlight Wind. Then the elf used them as bait to launch a barrage of 72 shots of great light jade. It's too mild. Even this was knocked down with the knot formed by the great chopper, and the last shot was grabbed with the right hand and crushed. Defense. Defense. Always defending. Not Ottar's attack, but Ottar's defense. Mia, Bell, and Ryuu, all three together, were still unable to break his guard. He drove the blackened greatsword in strong limbs, becoming a symbol of great fortitude. All three of them showed their surprise, but Ottar's expression didn't change as he dismantled the various attacks. Absolute defense. People always used to focus on the crushing attacks of Ottar, but in fact, defense was his real skill. His feet and waist are like a tree that doesn't move, his skill to respond to any attack and his eyes that see through his opponent's strategy like predicting the future. With the unusually high durability ability value, he is like a divine shield that resists all attacks. He didn't need the strengthening of magic nor the increase of skill. What he used was pure age itself. Just the flesh that was constantly exercised. The crystallization of skill and strategy that was ground. This was the scenario that Fierce One finally arrived at. Can't featuring him? There are no dead ends at all. Not a single one. The proof is that Ottar arguably never left the center of the amphitheater. In the goddess festival was knocked out by a blow to Bell and Ryuu comprehended at point. So far, Ottar is not even in a battle with them. This brat. How hard has he been working out since then? Mia, who was the only one qualified to fight the Fierce One Ottar head-on, also cursed and noticed something. After she retired from the Familia, Ottar's workout both in intensity and time was even more than before. While following the goddess, Freya, as an attendant, at the same time he never slacked off and kept delving in. Role-playing, after the girl, Sir, left early in the morning for the tavern, he spent all the rest of his time on self-training. Ottar no longer will go to the battle wilderness. Because no one is his opponent. Even Alan and others who are forbidden to fight are not enough to pose a threat. Ottar has not been to the dungeon for a long time. Mere exploration could only raise the ability value a little, and he knew that today's vessel had reached its limit. Ottar is the strongest. There was no one else in the labyrinth city of Orario who could make him stronger. Therefore, Ottar was immersed in his own heart. Alone, he wielded a sword, recalling his former strongest enemy in his mind, and every day, he just cultivated skill and strategy. Before the Lord God gave permission to challenge the trial that bets on his life, all as an even somewhat dull martial artist, grinding himself to the limit. Here is the difference between him and the Slayer, Kenshi, who was beating down monsters in the maze one after another. Absolute defense, that, we couldn't break either. Well, even if we all go together, we cannot succeed. At the base Twilight Manor, the sister Tiona nodded her head with a ragged breath and affirmed her sister Cheyenne, who was staring at the mirror. The Loki Familia had fought many times with the head of the rival faction Valvodar. Even they had not been able to break through the guardianship of Fierce One. AIS Wallenstein once also relied on Tiona and the girls to help, only to easily avoid the chase of him who crossed in front. The blonde-haired, blonde-eyed girl sat on the bench and clenched her fist on her knee, while her pupils twitched from the cruelty of having to have three people break through the absolute defense. This is already going to be our... Finn. Gareth, Riveria. I know. Gareth whispered softly as he watched with bated breath aside from AIS and the girls, and Riveria narrowed her eyes as Finn nodded. Sure enough, Ottar is already very close to LV. 8. The fact that this was too desperate for Bell and the others was coldly seen through by Braver's eyes. LV7 that was infinitely close to LV. 8. Finally, the top of the gods before, Zeus, and goddesses, Ryuu reached the strongest. The brave man agreed. The gods conclude. No one can be compared with the Fierce One. It is true that he is the pinnacle of adventurers. Therefore, what was ushered in was bound to be a vicious and bitter battle with a bitter realm of disadvantage. After launching the attack was bounced off, and then launched the sword counterattack so that Mia suffered more and more damage, and the frequency was more and more high. Bell and others, they can barely resist a battle this form, thanks to Mia. The absolute front guard who can fight head-to-head with Ottar, the front guard shield job that is Mia. If they fall, they will immediately be defeated. Ryuu and Bell both value the agility fighting style. Although good at high-speed combat, he cannot fight against the strength and defense specialization of Ottar. No matter how many times they disengaged with a single strike, no matter how they disrupted each other, as long as the attack could not penetrate the enemy's defense, they would not have any chance of winning. Ryuu and Bell sweat spurted out in abundance and sped around, supporting Mia so she wouldn't fall down. The adventurers fought with all their might, using the tenacious dwarves as a starting point, and biting into each other no matter what. Then, as if agreeing with their best efforts to fight, the boas, Ottar recited that Kamamarsi of the Silver Moon, Wilderness of Gold. The chanting resounded all around. The plaintive tone reached his ears, and Ryuu was the first to show his surprise. Parallel chanting? That's not it exactly. Ottar is not as good at chanting as Hedin and Honi, the first-level elves. Nor does Ryuu have the ability to perform all four acts of attack, movement, evasion and chanting at the same time in a real battle like this. He only limited the actions that include chanting to two like the order in the last war game, Apollo's Familia War. If it is a short chant, then the time needed to control it will be very short, and even the non-magical profession of Ottar can break the trick with power. The only difference with Mikoto is that he didn't move in the two actions including chanting, he chose defense instead. With his left foot firmly pinned to the ground with his center of gravity, he combined absolute defense with chanting. That magic is Golden Boar's Fur, Hildis Vini. A pure strengthening magic, absolute strength was enough to counteract a strike with Bel's maximum stored power. The teenager trembled. The dwarf's face was crooked. Together with the elf driven by anxiety, the three lunged from three directions. Stop him, you two. He cannot be stopped. He was like a wall that transcended heavenly justice, and all of them bounced back whether it was a chopping blow or a painful beating or an inflammatory thunder. I hereby take orders, this body is the fierce boas of war, king. Ottar would never shy away from using it. He wouldn't be foolish to proudly think that it is only magic was a short kill or a killer and keep it. It's just that in most cases, even if he doesn't use his mental power consumption, a magic that consumes a lot of energy, he can rely on his wrist power to suppress the enemy, resulting in not being able to use it normally. So, when it's time to use it, it will be used. Not to mention attacking, can't even stop chanting. Ottar can use magic, which means that the opponent can't be defeated by his strange power and absolute defense alone. Therefore, it was a great honor just to make Fierce use magic. Therefore, Bel could feel proud. Because he made Ottar use magic twice. Then, Bel could feel the upcoming despair. It was a declaration of absolute death sentence without any doubt. Goo. It was only possible for Mia to step forward. Even though she knew that the chant that was nearing completion was a bait. Dangling in front of her eyes, if she didn't stop the spell, the bomb Khaled magic would explode. She knew very well that she was being lured by the enemy to lunge at strategy and launch an attack like a death sentence. Too weak. Faced with Maya's full strength strike to destroy the defense, Ottar pointed out a fact. The Fierce One's defense is also the meaning of attack. The lacquered black greatsword that was swung down collided with the giant shovel, and instead of biting each other, it forcibly cleaved each other. Mia. The chopping flash overpowered the shovel and carved a slash on Maya's body. Blood erupted from her body as Ottar delivered another relentless front kick. Mia barely blocked it, at which point he took aim at the staggering Mia again, resting the hand clutching the hilt along with the greatsword on his right shoulder. The steel-like deltoid and oblique muscles bulged. The next instant, as if a cannon was fired, he thrust the greatsword forward. Exclamation point. Seeing the blow that was going to pierce Mia, Bel jumped up with a speed that was enough to reverse time. Heroic Wish, skill, was activated. A mere half-second of stored power. The particles of light gathered in the right foot, kicked the ground and thrust between Mia and Ottar. Facing the large, pitch-black sword that thrust forward with a roar, he set up Hestia's blade. The left hand held the hilt of the blade and the right hand held the face of the blade. The dagger Hestia knife in both hands resisted accurately and blocked the sword protrusion. The blade of God would not shatter. But it emits a sad cry. Ka. The sword protrusion pushed the dagger together into the abdomen, causing Bel to spit out an exaggerated amount of blood. Goo. The teenager became a cushion, but Mia was still painfully beaten by the violent impact and flew backwards after catching the teenager's body. Carrying the divine will of the goddess, bravely going forward, of course, a relentless pursuit ensued. The final chant was sung. Ottar was going to smash the enemy with her native magic. Hildis Vini. A radiance was born. The pitch-black greatsword wrapped around the golden fur that was indistinguishable from Bel's memory. Aiming at Mia, who slammed into the north wall of the theater, Ottar swung down the golden blow. If they fall down, that's the end of it. Hildisvini is a pure strengthening magic. It wasn't even considered to be empowering magic, and it didn't have a way to attack enemies from a distance by itself. However, what would it be like if you combine the attribute of pure strengthening of power with the freak-like arm strength? The answer is, a chop that swings can strangle the distance. A golden chopping light that far surpasses the chopping wave, hell kiss, of the female warrior, Aisha. Space was simply sliced open. The vision of Belle and Mia, who were covered in blood, was tinted with a glow that seemed like the color of dusk. At that moment Ryuu flew over. She came in the name of the wind, picked up Belle and Mia, and tried her best to get away. A moment after the shadows that overlapped together escaped out of range, the sound of decimation boomed. A strong impact and sound wave came. These beat Ryuu and the others, causing them to hit the ground several times and roll on the floor. Vin, who was immobilized by the shaking of the entire theater, also let out a scream that was not audible. The sound immediately disappeared. There was no aftermath left. The purely destructive blow does not cause secondary damage like high-level magic, but simply blows away everything that is there. Sh. Raising his head, Belle, bracing his body, Mia and Ryuu were dumbfounded. The north corner, the walls, columns, and hill-like height of the audience all disappeared. The decapitation destroyed the theater itself, and even penetrated the urban ruins on the outside, as well as the edge part of the ruins deep enough to reach beyond the island. The beautiful emerald green lake, the view of the huge depression lake came into view. Not as beautiful as Leon made it. The low murmur that fell from the mouth of the martial artist disappeared into a wave-like sound. Along the trajectory of the chop was sliced through the surface of the lake, and gradually returned to its original state. Belle and others were too frightened to move. Vin, who was lying on the south side of the audience and was not hurt, paled by the destruction. The city residents who saw everything through the mirror also froze in place. Come again. And the golden fur still had not disappeared. The second blow. The lacquered black sword, still wrapped in the golden light, was swung down mercilessly. As if replaying the previous scene, the mega slash light was released. It was over. Seeing the approaching finale, Belle, Ryuu, and even Mia thought of the end. Eternal Conquest, Immortal Thunder General. It was a spell that cut off their end. Varian Hild. An extremely large thunderbolt was released. It's not an infinite number of projectiles, but a great cannon strike that it is concentrated in one place. The giant lightning flash that would even swallow the floor master approached from the east and hit the side of the chopping light. The bright flash erupted in front of Belle and others, and immediately after, the direction of advance of gold changed from northeast to northwest. The northwest side of the building was also eliminated. At the same time, the 9 dead Bells and others snapped their heads back. Just changing the direction, how much spiritual power is it going to take away from me? You are an unconscionable incarnation. A white elf blandly walked down from the shelling site, the east side of the audience. One hand held a long-handled knife, bored with adjusting the position of crooked glasses, head and cylinder.